Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, pyramid scheme scammer ends up paying in the end. After that, oh, you're close with the boss, I am too. Finally, how I made a slobby roommate do her part by weaponizing social media. Before we get into today's episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss another episode of r/ProRevenge. Pyramid scheme scammer ends up paying in the end. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was trying to enlist into the military. I ended up not joining, but that's a story for another time. At this point, I was led to believe I was about 4 months away from leaving for boot camp. I was running out of savings and needing a part-time job for some spending cash while I waited around. So I did what any enterprising 20-something would do and searched Craigslist for jobs. I normally hate sales jobs, especially those based on commissions, but figured it would be a great way to earn some extra cash short term. Found a few job listings that looked promising and put out some applications. A few days later I received a call from David. He was opening up a new store and needed associates. He liked my resume and asked if I'd be available for an interview on Friday morning. I was very upfront with him and let him know that the distance was a bit more than I'd normally drive for a retail job, and asked what he was offering for an hourly rate to see if it was worth the drive. He told me that they were planning on offering an hourly rate in the mid-teens, along with commission. Seemed like an okay deal, so I agreed to be there Friday at 8 AM. Friday arrives as a cold, rainy day. I wear a nice shirt and tie and drive in heavy traffic to the address David provided. I knew the area from a previous job and eventually found the strip mall I was looking for. However, I'm not seeing any signage for the company name that was listed. There is, however, one empty space with no signage and 2 people inside. Okay, maybe they haven't gotten the store set up yet. No big deal. I had arrived early, knowing how bad traffic can be in that area. While in my car, I witnessed a young lady in business casual dress remove a sign from the window stating retail space for rent. Call 1800 blah blah. Okay, a little weird, but maybe it's the first day in the space. I walk in about 5 minutes early, and immediately my BS meter goes from yellow to the highest level, black watch plaid. The tables are all simple plastic folding tables. The kind college kids would buy for beer pong while on a shopping trip to Target. The walls are plastered with laminated charts featuring tons of dollar signs, smiling faces from stock photos, and an organizational chart showing an all too familiar shape. A pyramid. God damn it. Alright, might as well have fun for a while to wait out traffic going home. The young lady in the dress approaches me, introducing herself as Cindy. She welcomed me to company name and asked me to have a seat. She sat at a desk, another plastic table, and pretended to go through paperwork. However, she was really just shuffling papers around. We get to chatting, and I ask her how long she's worked for David. She says she's been his secretary for about 6 months and that I'm going to love it here. Eventually, a guy walks out of the back office. Early 30s, clean cut, wearing an ill-fitting suit from JCPenney's. As he is walking over, all smiles, Cindy says, "Oh, Dennis, our newest recruit is here." The guy stops in his tracks and gives her a cold stare. "It's David, Cindy. We've been over this." He turns back to me and gives me his brightest hard to find good help these days smile. David sits me down and welcomes me, saying they are going to start with a group interview and has me sit down in a circle of chairs. Eventually more people come in and sit down. David gets up and begins to thank us all for coming. He tells us about an exciting new opportunity from Cutco. He pulls out a set of knives and explains how with his company we can make as much money as we want, all while setting our own hours. He even pulls out a textbook, saying about how this company's revolutionary tactics have even been featured in college textbooks. He opened to a page, his hand covering parts of it, making sure we can all clearly see the words Cutco in large letters on the page. Sad to say, a lot of the other interviewees were very impressed by this. One pregnant girl seemed very excited that she could work around her pregnancy and upcoming birth. David was going on and on about how much money he's made and how hard workers will rise to the top quickly. At this point, David said he needed to take a quick phone call and gave us 5 minutes to have some coffee, chit chat, whatever. As he stepped away, he left his college textbook behind. Oops. So I pick it up, find the earmarked page, and read. As I thought, it was all about pyramid schemes and it had Cutco as one of the largest examples. It goes on to talk about how these are essentially scams, not economically viable, etc etc. So I decide to share this all with the group. I explain how pyramid schemes work, and how he's just scamming us. They seemed incredulous, so I said when David gets back, to ask them about what we need to pay to get started. That finally got everyone to realize what was going on. David walks in a few minutes later, and one of the girls in the group asked David what we need to get started. Well, all you need is your first set of knives to demonstrate. You can sell that on directly or have them order one and keep that as your demo kit. Doesn't matter. Just have to pay the startup fees for it. And that's when all hell broke loose. One kid started to get up and tell him to go frick himself, saying he's wasting our time and he's an AOLA for trying to pull this it. The pregnant girl is crying because she thought she found a place that would allow her to work despite being pregnant. David is clearly confused and flustered and asking who told them all this. When it becomes apparent I'm the wrench in the machine, David gets upset and starts telling me to leave. People are yelling at David. David is yelling at me. Cindy is trying to tell everyone she never met David before today and didn't know what this bullet was. Eventually we all walk out leaving David behind. As I'm walking to the door, I see, leaning against the wall, the sign that was in the window before retail space for rent. Call 1800 blah blah. As I get into my car I dial the number. Eventually I get through to a person and ask about the property for rent at the location of David's company. The nice lady on the phone apologized, saying they had just leased that property out. I asked if she knew how long the lease was for, as I was really interested in the property. She said she wasn't sure, they hadn't done the official paperwork yet. They were on their way to the space to sign everything with the leaseholder in a few hours. I told her everything that had just happened to me, and about David using the space for a pyramid scheme. She got extremely upset, saying that this stuff happens all the time in the industry. They will go to sign and last minute the leaseholder will decide to opt out, after using it for some fly-by-night operation. She thanked me for the info, and I thought that was the end of that. Or so I thought. A few weeks later, I received an email from David, telling me how I ruined his life, about how the property management found out what was going on, and weren't refunding his down payment on the space, saying he violated a clause in the paperwork he signed to hold the property, how he knew I was the one who called, because I'm a terrible human being, etc etc. Now he was out thousands for the space and supplies, how he only wanted to give us jobs and help us. It was a long, very angry email, with several things said about me and my mother. So I called 1800 blah blah again, spoke with the same lady I did before, and she was very interested in an email from David where he essentially admitted to what he was trying to do, said it would help them all in the legal proceedings. And don't you know I was more than happy to send that email along to her. Her lawyer said it should be an open and shut case at that point. I like to think I'm a helper. Oh, you're close with the boss, I am too. Obligatory I'm on mobile and whatnot. Back around 2000 to 2002, my dad and a friend of his started a company. They put it in the grueling and overwhelming amount of work necessary for it to have grown exponentially over the last 20 years. A couple years ago, they had an opening for a technical editor and my dad offered me the position. I would just like to say that I am so unbelievably grateful for this and I always will be, and I'm very mindful of the fact that I have to tread lightly sometimes. Every year during the holiday season they, like most businesses, throw a holiday party. They have several around the country so every office has one, but the main one is where corporate is headquartered. The first year I attended the party, nobody knew who I was. I tend not to share who I'm related to, for obvious reasons unless somebody asks. It's not a secret by any means, but it's not something I shout from the rooftops. Anyways, the bar opened an hour before the party technically started, and since it's an open bar, a few people were already quite a few drinks in. I went up to get a drink and somebody, who I've never met, introduced himself to me in a pretty rude and arrogant way. I'm talking you probably already know who I am, but if you don't, you should. I'm Holden. Fake name. He was clearly pretty drunk, but it's a party and I didn't blame him. I shook his hand and tried to walk away, but he wouldn't stop talking about how important he was to the company. I smiled and nodded and oh-and-oh-ed for quite a while, even as he spilled his drinks on me from gesturing wildly. Eventually he told me I'm also really close with the president. This interested me quite a bit, because that was my dad and I had literally never heard this person's name. Not a problem though, because I didn't know all his friends. But this dude kept going. Here's how that conversation went. Holden. Yeah, you could pretty much call us family friends. Me. Really? You know his family? Holden. Oh yeah, of course. We've all gotten together a few times. His kids love me. Me. Whoa, that's pretty cool. I wasn't planning on saying anything, because he was drunk and it didn't really matter to me. However, he then turns around and says okay, well I have more interesting people to talk to now, and walked away. I was livid. First of all, you spilled your crappy dirty martinis all over me so I smelled like olives. You were kind of a dong from the get-go. You waste 30 minutes bragging about yourself, and then you tell me I'm uninteresting? So I waited until the perfect moment when the party had started to taper off a bit. Our homebody Holden was still there, even more drunk than he was before. He eventually made his way over to my dad and mom, chatting them up and whatnot. I sidle over to the group and he gives me a stinky, probably thinking I'm trying to cozy up to them too. The look of horror on his face when my dad hugs me and kisses me on the cheek and says hey honey, your brother is coming to pick us up, do you need a ride, was indescribable. It was a combination of I think I just hit my pants and I'm going to yeet myself out this window immediately. It was genuinely one of the best small revenges of my life. In case anybody wonders, him and I laugh about the incident now and it's not a big deal. It's a funny story that I like to tell. I also would like to say that I hope I don't come across as entitled or bratty. Like I said, I'm so grateful for the opportunity I was handed and I work very hard to prove my worth. How I made a slobby roommate do her part by weaponizing social media. Petty revenge story time. Grab a juice box and gather round, everyone. During my sophomore year in college, I moved into an apartment with my best friend from our hometown. Let's call her Penelope. Before we moved in together, Penelope had lived with her grandma and often complained about how obsessively clean and persnickety she was. I wouldn't consider myself a neat freak either, so I sympathized. And then, we moved in together. And I realized, Penelope's grandma was not obsessively clean after all. Penelope was just a total slob. She would leave dishes in the kitchen sink for days on end. Her personal clutter grew everywhere like weeds. I never once saw her vacuum, sweep, scrub anything. If I didn't clean something myself, it just wouldn't get done. Reminding or asking her nicely only yielded promises that she would do it later. This came to a head one day when the trash was overflowing, and I had already taken it out the past 3 times. I reminded Penelope that she'd later at me the night before and she should probably take it out now. In reply, she rolled her eyes and told me to quit acting like her grandma. Okay. Obviously asking nicely wasn't going to work. So what did I do? I took Penelope's favorite pastime, social media, and weaponized it against her. Trash was overflowing again, and it was her turn. Bootleg Moon has tagged you in a post. Like this if Penelope should take the trash out. At first she just laughed, but then quickly realized I wasn't messing around. Like this if Penelope should clean her spill on the floor. Like this if Penelope should clean her hair from the sink. Like this if Penelope should unload the dishwasher. With every post, I included a photo, yes, including her wet hair hamsters clogging the drain. To my glee, the public humiliation worked. Her family delighted in liking these posts and poking fun at her in the comments, which only added to the revenge. But it worked. It got to the point where I would make eye contact with Penelope, pointedly glare at one of her messes, and then pick up my phone, prompting her to jump up and rush over to clean it, albeit crankily. I tried attaching a photo of her messy bathroom for old times' sake, but I think the mods took my post down because of it.